Hey everybody, October is over. We are flying through fall, and I don't know about you, but October was a fantastic reading month for me. I felt like maybe I was gonna go into a slump after September, just like moving into the colder weather. I don't traditionally like to be cold and rainy and wet, Pacific Northwest typical weather. But I surprised myself and got through quite a few books this month. So that is what we are going to be chatting about today. So hi, my name is Delia. I love books. I love bandanas. I am so excited you are at my channel today. So I read 8 books in October, which is pretty good for me. That's probably the highest I have hit so far since starting my channel. And just in life in general, I don't think I've ever been reading at the rate I am currently reading. So I completed 7 of the books. 1 was a DNF about halfway through. 5 of these books I've already talked about on my channel. So I'm just gonna briefly mention those, and then the last 3 books I will do a more comprehensive review of a little bit later. Sound good? Okay, let's get into it. So first I read, let's get this a little closer. Okay, so I read both The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman and Eleanor, Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. Both of these books were 5 stars. I loved them so much. Highly recommended. I will post the link to my reviews of those up here. So if you want a more in-depth review of those, you can find it there. But if you just want to take my word for it and grab a couple of really good books, I really enjoy both of these. Also in that video, I have my DNF explanation. Margaritas, Mexico and Murder, or maybe Mexico, Margaritas and Murder. Can't remember for sure, by Wendy Day. It was a DNF for me, unfortunately. So if you want to know why, that's in that video as well. I also read Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. I'm really starting to like some of the newer sci-fi that's coming out. I thought this was super well done. I did a beach vlog on this one, so I'll link this there for you as well. Oh my gosh, this one was so good as well. I read so many good books this month. Another 5-star, As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow, by Zoulfa Katouh. This is about the Syrian Revolution, which I knew pretty much nothing about, and it was very good. So again, I already did a review on that, so we will not spend a lot of time there. So those are the books that we've already covered. Now let's talk about the 3 books that I have not talked to you about yet. So we're gonna get the bad one out of the way first, because my last video I talked about the bad one last, and I felt like it was a terrible way to end. Like, this book was terrible, bye. So we're just gonna rip off the Band-Aid now and then move on to better things. So Uprooted by Naomi Novik, probably my biggest disappointment of the year so far. I read Spinning Silver earlier in the year in spring, and I loved it so much. It like went straight to the top of my books, of like my book list of the year. I was like, this book was amazing. It had like the perfect amount of magic, the perfect development of characters. I just loved that book. I felt like it was so well done. So after I read that, I started researching other Naomi Novik books. And it's interesting because there was not a lot of positive feedback about the others except for Spinning Silver. And a lot of people told me that Spinning Silver is like her best work and that they didn't like her other works. Like I remember thinking, oh man, that's such a bummer. But I wanted to try anyways to see for myself. So Tara with Tara Talks Books and I did a buddy read on this one because she also had read Spinning Silver and wanted to give Naomi Novik another try. So we read this month and it was such a disappointment. The beginning was okay. So we have our main character. She's like a young girl, like 16 or 17, living in this small town by this woods. And there's this magical creature called the dragon, who's like a man. He's not a dragon. And he comes once every 10 years and takes a girl out of the village and takes them into his tower. And no one really knows what happens to them in this tower for 10 years. They just know that after 10 years, the girl comes back and then she doesn't ever stick around for long. She's like so dramatically changed that she ends up leaving and they don't really see her anymore. So, it's like starts and they're getting ready and he's gonna come and pick the girl on a certain night, and the main character and everyone in the town is sure it's gonna be the friend who's really beautiful and wonderful and talented. They think she's gonna be picked, and instead he picks the main character. Agnesica. I don't know. This is one of those words that I like had a way to say it in my head, and then when I read it, and I'm like, I have no idea. So she goes to live in the tower. So it starts off okay with like this premise of like, what's gonna happen? Like, oh, she's going to this tower, what's gonna happen there? And man, it just went downhill from there. Like, she, this might be a little spoilery, if you want to read this and go in super blind, but this happens pretty much at the beginning. So I wouldn't say this will like ruin the story for you, because if you start it, you're going to find out pretty soon. She realizes that she has like these little magic abilities. But then it's like she goes very drastically from like magic abilities that she's figuring out about to being like the greatest magic ever, and her magic doesn't like fit with anyone else's magic, and she can do all these crazy things. It's like this magic without any limitations, and like I don't know, like it just didn't make sense to me. Like I just, oh my gosh, I felt so, it was like just kind of nonstop action, which I don't love. There was not a lot of character building at all. She kept making these decisions like, oh, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna save this person, I'm gonna do this, but then there was no like connection. There was like a tiny bit of grieving her village, but there wasn't a lot of like, oh, I can't believe this is my life now. It was just kind of like, oh, here I am, and let's start running around from place to place and doing all this crazy stuff, and like it just felt so flat for me. And then like there was a super graphic like scene, a love scene in it that I felt was super misplaced and super graphic, and like was not at all like, it just didn't seem realistic at all. It was like kind of like abusive. It was weird. I did not like it at all. I didn't like it. I probably skimmed like the last fourth of the book. I was just like, okay, like does everyone stay alive? Like it didn't do it for me at all. I was so bummed. It didn't even really feel like it was written by the same book as Spinning Silver. Like the beginning a little bit, like weaving into the story, but after that it was just non-stop action, random magic that didn't make any sense, like lots of death, and like I don't know. I just couldn't. I was so bummed. I think Tara liked it, so I think she gave it a 4-star and I gave it a 2-star, just because the beginning I thought was okay. And some of the magical spells she did, I was like, that's kind of cool. Like there's one part where she's like doing a spell with the dragon, and I was like, oh, like that's neat. But for the most part, it felt pretty flat. So check out Tara's review if you want to hear more positive things about this book. People love this book, but it was not for me. And I probably will not be reading any more Naomi Novik anytime soon. I am pretty turned off by her rating in this book in general. So there's that. Okay, bad book done. Now we can talk about the books that I loved. Okay, so I had the surprise. This has been on my holds in the library for so long. I had the pleasure of listening to Where the Crawdads Sings. And it came available like mid-October, and I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to fit this in, but I did. I listened to it and I loved it so much. It was so well written. So we have this girl, and she's the marsh girl, and basically what happens is she lives in this little like marsh hut with her family, and her mother ends up walking out on them. Her father's like this abusive, terrible man, and then her older siblings end up leaving, and she is basically left at 7 years old to live by herself in this marsh, and fend for herself, and she fends for herself, and she grows up being the marsh girl, and she doesn't really fit in with society. She just kind of stays to herself, is in her boat, doing her own thing. Very sad, actually. Like the beginning of this book was kind of was very sad just seeing this child struggle. But then learning how to survive and learning how to fend for herself. So that's one of the timelines we have happening. And then we have another timeline that's flashed forward like 15 years into the future when she, from when she was a child. So she's like 25-ish, 26-ish. And one of the town's people, one of the like the hot shot cool boys in town, is found dead at the bottom of this big tower. And there's no footprints, no like fingerprints. It's very mysterious how he ended up dead at the bottom of this tower. And she ends up being kind of one of the suspects. So one timeline is moving forward, having her growing up and the people she meets and the things she goes through. And the other timeline is the police trying to figure out, like, was this girl involved in it? Was she not? And the whole story, you are trying to figure out, like, oh my gosh, like, did she do this? Did she not do this? Like, what is happening here? I felt like it was so well done. It had me like switching sides till the very end. Like, did she do this? Did she not? I felt like the descriptions of the marsh, and there's so many descriptions of like the wildlife and the birds, and she ends up collecting all these feathers and butterflies, and I just feel like it was so easy to become completely immersed in this world. I loved it so much. Yeah, so that's all I'll say because I don't want to spoil the whole thing for you. But if you have not read Where the Crawdads Sings yet, definitely put it on your list. It's a 5-star, obviously. I give way too many 5 stars. One of my goals for the new year is going to be to come up with a more strict rating system, because like this is a 5-star that's like, go get it, go read it. And then I have other 5 stars that I'm like, yeah, that was really good. I really liked it, 5-star. So there needs to be some sort of distinction, because this one was like, seriously, a 5-star. Like, so good. I loved it. Okay. Also, I got from the library, just randomly one day, they had it available. When I was in there, like by the front, there was like this rack of like Lucky Day books. And I got Other Birds by Sarah Addison Allen. And this, again, was not a book that was on my radar to read in October, but when I saw it, I remember, I think it was a book of the month pick a few months back, and I remember thinking it sounded interesting, but I did not purchase it. So I thought, why not? We'll give it a try and see if I can fit it into October. I did, and I loved it as well. This book was magical realism, and so there's like little bits of magic sprinkled throughout, but it feels like normal, like a normal part of the story. So we have our main character named Zoe, and she inherits this apartment on this island, this remote island that has been made famous only because this author wrote a book about it at one point. So it's this island that's kind of like a tourist destination. There's not a lot of like locals that spend the full year there, but she ends up moving to this apartment that her mother left her. And she, it's like a small little complex, like there's only a few different apartments in this complex, and she ends up just kind of starting to befriend the people in this complex. And then one of them passes away suddenly, so it kind of starts to draw them all out and all together. So I loved this book so much because it tackled so many different topics. So we have like little bits of magic, little bits of mystery, little bits of like her story. She was young, like 18, so kind of like so kind of like a coming of age story. A couple of the people who live in this complex have like had some pretty traumatic things happen to them in the past, and they're trying to move forward from that. There was like one who really had her walls up, so it's kind of about like letting your walls drop and letting people in to be your friend. I just feel like it tackled so many great topics. It was told from quite a few different points of view, so I love to see kind of an internal view of what was going on with each character, but then also how they were viewed by the other characters as they were being talked about from their points of view, if that makes sense. Just kind of like crossing. And there's like this courtyard too, where these birds live, which is why it's called Other Birds. The person who wrote the book on this island and made the island famous, like created this like kind of like sanctuary for these birds to live. So they're always like looking out across the courtyard at each other, like, what's going on in that apartment? What's going on over there? I just felt like it was really interesting, really well done. It just had the perfect amounts of everything, like not too much magic, not too much mystery, not too much drama. There was some great food scenes. Like I love a good, like where there's good food descriptions. I loved, and also the main character was just kind of quirky and awkward, but like wanted to be friends with everybody and wanted to bring them all together. So I just really enjoyed it so much. I loved it. I think I definitely want to see what else Sarah Addison Allen has written and read some more of her books, because I really liked her style. It was one of the books that I was like way past my bedtime, and I was like, no, I need to finish this. Like I need to keep going. I cannot go to sleep until I wrap this one up. So that was great as well. So overall, October was fantastic. I'm so happy about the books I found. Just the experiences I had reading them, I felt like were really fulfilling. Like it just made me feel like, oh yeah, so good. So super happy to share that with you. I'm in November now, so we're reading some nonfiction November and a few other things going on. So I will share all of that with you at a later time. For now, I hope you are having a good day wherever you are. I hope you take some time today to read a good book or two. And if you're having a bad hair day, just wear a bandana. Bye.